And before we continue with our video, I want to thank all of you who are subscribing to the channel. Part 2 of this work is in production, but today we're going for a new work. How come you haven't read it yet? So, let's go to the video. The story begins with our protagonist telling us that more than 100 years ago, they witnessed an extraordinary global phenomenon. The sky was illuminated with a field of energy from stunning auroras. People realized that their bodies had undergone transformations due to the influence of the auroras. However, the effects of this extraordinary aurora were not limited to humans, as various changes also occurred in plants and animals in nature. This led to a battle for dominion over the earth. Humans managed to domesticate some low-tier exotic creatures, while highly intelligent exotic beasts settled in different parts of the world, watching humans with threatening eyes. To combat these strange creatures, humans built fortress-like cities and selected outstanding individuals after the mutation, assigning them the mission of protecting humanity. These individuals were called the Awakened, but that's not all. The Awakened are defined by 5 main attributes: elements, basic skills, extremities, thoughts, and mental power. In the year 1514 of the New Ether, our protagonist tells us that they are in the poor district of the Alliance-based city of Uva and are known as the heir to the legendary family of divine assassins. Everyone knows them as the Scissors Awakened. However, the protagonist's thoughts are interrupted by an annoyed client who realizes that the protagonist is a bit distracted, but we know why. Another important detail about the protagonist is that, in addition to being a stylist, they also provide private massages. However, these massages are free only for women. Nevertheless, as the protagonist had signs like this posted on the wall, one of the clients ends up questioning whether a private massage is legal. The protagonist confidently responds that yes, it is completely legal. The girl, upon hearing this, decides it's better to drop the subject, which leaves the protagonist a bit frustrated. They comment that it's not necessary to be so strictly legal. However, when the conversation starts to get interesting, someone interrupts. This person is a beautiful and seductive trusted maid of the family named Yuan, who informs the protagonist that Miss Lin requested their immediate presence. The protagonist accepts the request with excitement. While heading there, they apologize to the other client, claiming they have urgent matters to attend to. They promise to return soon to discuss the private massage. As the protagonist walks away, we see that one of the clients begins to complain about them, as they were just about to give a 5-star review, something that doesn't seem to matter much to the protagonist recently, as they ignore it. After this, over time, the protagonist arrives at the Lin family mansion. However, upon arriving there, they think to themselves that last month, Miss Lin called 5 times. And now this month, it's already the 7th time she's asking why they haven't come over yet. On that night, however, when the protagonist is entering the mansion, we can see how the guards there cast a hostile look at him, clearly disdainful, as they think he is a resident of a poor neighborhood. The protagonist notices this societal judgment, but doesn't mind, and enters the mansion. Inside the mansion, the young lady finally calls the protagonist to inform him that he has arrived, which makes her very happy. However, she asks why he is arriving so late. It is at this moment that we are introduced to a beautiful young lady, the daughter of the prestigious Link family in the wealthy area. The young lady invites the protagonist to her room so they can talk privately, which leads the protagonist to ask if she is considering something special for that night. Later, while in the young lady's room, she tells the protagonist that she wishes to change her hairstyle. He agrees to help her, which disappoints the protagonist, as he believes she already knew that. He asks what hairstyle she wants, and the young lady explains that he should help her prepare her hair to make it easier to manage, as in 3 days, she needs to go to the Advanced Combat Academy. The protagonist is surprised by the mention of the Advanced Combat Academy and questions her about it. The young lady confirms it, stating that from that moment on, their chances of seeing each other will become less frequent. While saying this, it becomes clear that she wants the protagonist to beg her to stay, but he surprises her by saying that he is also going to the Advanced Combat Academy. The young lady becomes emotional and makes a proposal to the protagonist. If he manages to get into the academy, She will give him everything he desires, referring to paradise. Later that night, the protagonist is cleaning but feels a bit down, wanting to appear more attractive to Miss Link. He remembers what she said about giving him everything he desires and wonders what to do, wishing his potential would awaken a bit more so he could enter the Advanced Combat Academy. At this moment, the protagonist receives a message from an unknown number warning him to stay away from his cousin, threatening to sever the tendons in his feet and hands. This enrages the protagonist, as his family is a constant presence in poor neighborhoods, and the messages leave him quite irritated. At that moment, someone enters the mansion, and his name is Alien. Seeing the protagonist troubled, Alien asks what is bothering him so much, then says, "Did you just get a treasure map that contains information about the awakening location?" He asks the protagonist if he wants to go with Eric to take a look, saying this could instantly increase his awakening potential. This makes the protagonist wonder how to increase awakening potential and if it is an awakening position. However, this makes the protagonist happy, as he says it is time for the flashes of war to take off, and he asks excitedly to Ruivo if the awakening potions can really unleash all his inner potential, even though they are an unreachable treasure on the black market. Ruivo affirms that they can and shows a map indicating that the position is in a dangerous area on the outskirts of District 7 of the city of Bass, which used to be a military research base for the potion. Although it is now abandoned, they say there are still treasures there. The protagonist refuses, asking if it is a dangerous area and if he is really willing to risk his life there. Ruivo explains that he has to go personally because he is trapped in a closed and sealed room that he cannot open. However, the scissors opener can open anything, and he knows the location, ensuring it is safe. The protagonist agrees to move forward and promises to share the potions equally. Before Ruivo can respond, the protagonist hears that he intends to seduce, but Ruivo believes it will be difficult with his current skills. The protagonist is a bit surprised and asks what motivated Ruivo to be so kind. However, the protagonist encourages Ruivo, saying that danger means nothing compared to his Miss Lin, which makes Ruivo praise his attitude. Time passes, and they arrive at the dangerous zone on the outskirts of District 7 of Jingchan. The protagonist is already there with Ruivo and asks why he looks so somber. Ruivo states that the medicine research base is nearby, and the protagonist gets excited. Inside the base, Ruivo tells the protagonist to be careful and stay safe while he moves forward and lights the way. The protagonist observes that his destiny is just ahead and can't wait to obtain the medicine. When they find the safe where the medicine is stored, the protagonist easily opens it with his scissors opener skills. It is the legendary Awakening Delights. However, what the protagonist did not expect was to be betrayed by Ruivo, who took the medicine from his hand and asked the protagonist if he thought he could become a semi-awakened while injecting the medicine himself. The protagonist replied that what he did was only for himself, but this was not what the protagonist felt. What he felt was weakness, and falling to the ground, he asked Ruivo why his power was fading. The protagonist answered that there was still a message in the information, telling him there was only one last dose, and that its use would require the sacrifice of all a person's energy. Crushing the protagonist's face into the ground, Ruivo laughed in his face and told him he felt his inner genes recombining and evolving. And to him, this was incredible because he realized the power of the awakened. However, after doing this and leaving the protagonist dizzy on the ground, Ruivo told the protagonist not to worry, because although they had been good friends in the past, he would not be the one to kill him. However, soon enough, those strange creatures would be drawn by the smell of his blood and devour him completely. The traces would only seem like an unfortunate accident. Lastly, the protagonist said that he had to understand that they both came from the poorest neighborhoods. Therefore, if he got involved with the wrong people, he had to blame himself. However, as he watched the danger move away, the protagonist realized that all his bones were broken and that he could not exert any strength. Thus, as he agonized, he wondered if he was destined to die. But remembering everything that happened with the young lady, He said he could not accept that. However, when he finished saying this, a large bear appeared. Clearly, as he had been warned, the bear was attracted by the protagonist's blood. But we need not worry because the bear was defeated by someone, and that someone is the beautiful and seductive Miss Line, who made a spectacular entrance. She not only defeated the large bear, but also defeated all the monsters in the area, demonstrating that she had great talent. We can see that her skills are impressive, as are her... However, remember that Miss Line defeated all the monsters in the area. She was happy about finally arriving in time because, had they delayed a bit more, the protagonist would have been in serious danger. Moreover, she did not come alone, but brought her servants. Upon seeing their presence, the protagonist wondered how Miss Line ended up in this place. That said, as the young lady held the protagonist in her arms, her servant told us that the awakened human, also known as the human GPS, was talking. However, as the young lady wiped the protagonist's tears, she told him that she always knew his awakening potential would never be enough to enter the combat academy. Therefore, she thought the protagonist was only trying to make her happy, but she could not believe he was willing to risk his life for her. The protagonist was completely exhausted because normal treatments no longer had any effect. The effects would only come if he became a man and signed the shared awakening contract. Only then could he recover from his wound. But at the same time, he had to bear in mind that in the future, he would have to face even more relentless and smoky wild creatures than the beasts. And as the protagonist of this post-apocalyptic world, death could even be considered a valid option. However, the protagonist apparently does not care about what the girl hinted at, because with tears in his eyes, he tells her that he does not want to die because he still has many dreams to fulfill. Something that the girl immediately hears, showing the insignia she had on her chest and telling the protagonist that they need to start then. However, he hesitates and asks if she did not mention that they were going to sign a collaboration contract, stating that this way his wounds would definitely worsen. The girl becomes quite irritated, but the protagonist says that a man can never say no at any moment. After saying this, their contract begins. While the contract is in progress, the girl tells him that she is a human being with abilities. Psychic who inherited the genes from her family and whose awakening ability is shared with her lineage. At one point, she used her awakening power to absorb the nucleotidic cells of her body, but that's not the end of it, as the girl continues to tell the protagonist that once the cells enter her body, the contract signature will succeed, and they will be able to share their powers. In short, from that moment on, they will become a symbiotic organism, which is why the protagonist now needs to take care of her. However, after the contract is completed, the protagonist is confused and wonders if that's all. He then realizes that he feels energized, as if his body is overflowing with energy. The girl, upon seeing that it was the protagonist's friend who shone intensely, becomes embarrassed and explains to the protagonist that this is a body awakening ability. Now he is in a state of symbiosis and has shared his potential with the protagonist. For this reason, the protagonist is now partially awakened. While thinking that he was originally supposed to use this ability with her fiancé, the protagonist's friends, all embarrassed, tell him that there is something he needs to know. If one of them dies, the other will too. Therefore, they must protect each other. And that's why the protagonist must stay by her side at school and study with her. Another person who was interested in the protagonist's friend is a maid who, revealing more than she should, asks the protagonist to return to the mansion link that night, allowing her to help him bathe and change clothes. Furthermore, she tells the protagonist that she wants to teach him the correct use of body strengthening. Literally, the girl is pursuing the protagonist. But although her intentions have been quite clear, they become even clearer when she asks if he bathed and changed clothes properly and made the correct gestures. However, the most important thing the girl tells the protagonist is that she likes the feudal dress, which makes the protagonist look at her in surprise. Nevertheless, this is not tolerated by the girl. and she blasts him into the air, saying that they both need to go to school. While flying, she apologizes to the protagonist for this. After that, we transition to the Advanced Battle Institute, where the protagonist was present. The institute seemed truly imposing, but someone approached the girl there and said, "Miss Link, you are very beautiful. I wonder if you would like to be my girlfriend." But as expected, this was noticed by the protagonist, who, grabbing her by the arm, tells him to keep his dirty hands away from the girl, saying that his wife is no one here. However, anyone can be affected by the protagonist's recklessness. The good girl, the lady, ends up literally tearing all her clothes, and the culprits of this are those brothers who ask if the protagonist is not the barber from the poor neighborhood. When they burst in, they manage to enter the gym in the poor neighborhood with force. However, upon hearing that the protagonist is just a boy from the poor neighborhood, they look at him thinking he was someone important, but it turns out the protagonist is the trash of the poor neighborhood. Because of this, they do the same to him, which is unfortunate for him. They prepare an attack to do this to the protagonist, but before the attack is carried out, a security guard appears and asks who is making so much noise, saying that anyone who doesn't want to take the exam seriously must leave the premises. They decide to leave, but the boy shows the middle finger to the protagonist before going. After this, time passes, and we move to an instructor at the institute, specifically at the registration point. He informs everyone that in their combat academy they have advanced and don't need useless people since the entry approval is a combat simulation against strange creatures. The candidate has to face this, and they have 5 minutes to fight. The evaluation will decide whether they will be admitted and in which groups they will be placed according to the potential shown on the monitoring device and the time they take to defeat the strange creatures. After an instructor says this, the test begins, and the first group is the young lady Lei and her maid. When the test begins, they surprise everyone, but what surprises them the most is how she defeats the monsters with elegant and effective moves. The boys are speechless upon seeing this. However, what surprises everyone even more is Miss Lin, who defeats all the monsters in just 0.5 seconds. While they are impressed, they recognize the girl and say that she is the famous Miss Lin from the prominent Line family, and therefore it's no wonder she is so powerful. What also impresses the protagonist is that he thinks it's incredible that Miss Lin's potential value is 68, the same as his. This means he also has this potential since they remember that they made a contract. Another one who also impresses everyone is the maid, who has a potential of 60 and takes only 35 seconds to defeat the monsters. This leaves everyone stunned, questioning if it's possible to have an examiner with potential above 60. Moreover, they hear rumors that the maid is the personal maid of Miss Lin, belonging to the distinguished Vinco family. The test instructor, upon seeing the girl's potential, says to himself that the family is indeed worthy of being a distinguished family that will soon become a reliable combat force. After saying this, he orders the following examiners to enter the facilities. One of the examiners is the protagonist, who says that his moment has finally come and that he will show everyone that the boy from the poor neighborhood also has a potential of 68. He tells everyone to tremble in his presence, but his words make the others laugh at him. Meanwhile, the boy with the strange hairstyle tells the protagonist he should quickly return to his miserable place, mocking him and calling the protagonist scum. A poor neighborhood, he tells him that he is no longer ashamed, but the protagonist, in light of this and with all confidence, thinks to himself that soon they won't be able to laugh at anything. When everything seems to be going well, a person arrives whose identity is an instructor, saying that there was an error in the data of the generation of the fantastic being in room number 2. It is generating a fantastic being with an intensity almost at the elite level. And this surprises him a little since the protagonist has just entered the room. The instructor, impressed by what the boy has just argued, asks him what he just said, stating that a fantastic being from the universe is a challenge even for level awakens. Tremble in his presence, but his words make the others laugh at him. Meanwhile, the boy with the strange hairstyle tells the protagonist he should quickly return to his miserable place. mocking him and calling the protagonist scum. A poor neighborhood. However, Miss Lin hears this and casts a threatening look at him, but before she can hit him, an instructor steps forward and would slap him. However, the fact that he is also from the poor area and is currently an instructor at the academy makes him say that the people in there might become his future combat companions. If he thinks he has the right to enter the academy just because of a small conflict and rejoices in their misfortune, the boy apologizes to the instructor, saying he is very sorry and was really wrong. However, he thinks the opposite, saying to himself that the protagonist made him get beaten in public. Therefore, he calls the protagonist trash and says he hopes he becomes a failure as quickly as possible. However, Miss Lin says anyway that she hopes the protagonist will be careful and not get into trouble because even someone provisionally classified as rank U would still need some time to defeat him. But since the protagonist has just awakened, his functioning is not stable, so she wonders if he can really do it. However, while she is wondering this, we can see a mysterious person observing the protagonist through a screen. Upon seeing the protagonist, this mysterious person simply laughs